Hey, Retro Trekkers, let's talk some Star Trek. Hang on. I have an intro here somewhere. There we go. Retro Trekkers. Get down with the retro. Retro Trekkers. Capt'n John and Cmdr. Retro Trekkers. We love our Star Trek. Retro Trekkers. The nerd muscles get to flex. Retro Trekkers. Get down with the retro. Retro Trekkers. Let's get it done. Retro Trekkers. All right, my friends. Let's get this started. Retro Trekkers, the show where we recap and review classic episodes of Star Trek from all the Star Trek series. Nothing's off limits here. And so glad that a bunch of you have joined us. We've got Raphael. Hey, Raphael, how are you? We've got Chris. Chris is here. And Chris, a poignant episode. I once had a girlfriend who was 3 months poignant. Chris, I got your number, pal. It's not just me, of course. There's also my intrepid and creative and wonderful and tolerant today commander, and that would be Mr. Townsell, Joe Townsell. Joe, sorry, man, had a really rough start to this show in the green room as I was trying to pull things together. I still have not got a good editing routine, so the bad one has I thought for sure I was going to have the thing done very quickly. That was not to be. So
well, Captain, no apology necessary, of course. I will point out that had you said not word one, nobody would have been the wiser. But one thing we pride ourselves on, everybody, is that we're always upfront and just casual and relaxed with our friends. And you know what? One way or the other, we're going to get it to you. Is that right, John?
Yes, we are going to get it to you. I was just chuckling that Chris had said join every other editor in that, John.
Yes,
that's true. I know a lot of editors, and things don't ever go the same way twice. So, oh boy, we're good. We have got a heck of an episode for this one. And I think we could probably jump right into the beats, Mr. Townsell.
Why not? No, I don't think there's much of a genesis for this. It's a great episode. Doesn't have a huge backstory and creation. So yes, I agree. Let's just dive right in.
All right.
Trekkers. This week from Star Trek Enterprise, Twilight. Archer is rudely awakened by another inconvenient space battle. He runs to the bridge and demands to know what's going on. T'Pol is now wearing a noticeably less form-fitting command uniform. She orders security to take the confused captain back down below. But before they can comply, those darn Xindi blow up the Earth. Best teaser ever. Even more nail-biting than the pre-opening credits for the TNG episode Cause and Effect. The one where the Enterprise D blows up over and over again. After consulting their copy of the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, the Enterprise leads a ragtag fleet of ships, maybe even including the Battlestar Galactica itself, transporting what remains of humanity to parts unknown. So, cue the horrible Faith of the Heart opening theme, which now seems to be a little trite. Archer wakes up again, now in a ramshackle house. He sports a very gray bowl-style haircut that looks like it was fashioned by a deranged Vulcan or something. He finds T'Pol. Her hairstyle has changed too, now longer and more casual. Most shocking of all, she calls Archer by his first name. Talk about a breach of protocol. What the F is going on here? T'Pol asks Archer what his most recent memory is. When he tells her, she claims that's now 12 years after Earth was blown to smithereens by the Xindi. Now flashing back to the past, Archer and T'Pol are talking about movie night, when the ship gets pummeled by multiple anomalies. Oh, those irritating little anomalies. One of them zips through the corridor, knocking Archer and T'Pol on their butts. But worse, T'Pol's leg is pinned. Archer manages to free her, but the anomaly whips back around and knocks him out. Archer is taken to sickbay, where he wakes up 3 days later. Dr. Phlox explains that parasites from the anomaly have infected his brain. His short-term memory is now kaput. Enterprise searched for the Xindi weapon, but to no avail. The Xindi reptilians don't want a single human left standing. They kill several crew persons, including Travis, and damage the ship within an inch of its life. You know, the only good human is a dead human, and the Xindi intend to hunt down every single last one of them. So no more is the late great planet Earth. Archer sobs when the truth hits him like a ton of bricks. T'Pol then explains that Enterprise, Intrepid, and a few other ships tried to lead the last 6,000 humans to Ceti Alpha 5. Ceti Alpha 5, you remember? Well, this takes place well before Khan gets exiled there, which looks like it'll never happen now. This brings us to speed again, as the last of humanity now lives in the refugee camp. Conditions on Ceti Alpha 5 are hard, although not as bad as they'll become in the Wrath of Khan. The ragtag fleet of remaining ships is in orbit, keeping watch over the Hooverville below. So Vol wants T'Pol to head back to Vulcan, reminding her that their planet is still in one piece. Oh yeah? Just wait until the J.J. Abrams 2009 Trek movie. Nope, T'Pol will stay put and take care of Archer. Phlox arrives, ready to try a new treatment using warp core energy or some such. Thus, they return to the ship now commanded by Trip, and treatment begins. Looking through the brain scans, they realize that the parasites have also disappeared from the past. As a result, they just may be able to change history and stop the Xindi, if all the parasites are eliminated. Reset button, don't fail us now. However, before they can continue the treatment, a ship piloted by yet another alien spy appears near Ceti Alpha. He tells Trip and Malcolm that he was hired to spy on Phlox and report if he ever left the nebula. This would lead them directly to the remaining humans. Next thing you know, the Xindi arrive in force and start blasting, allowing the Xindi to track down the humans. Then, 6 Xindi ships arrive and the battle begins. 2 of the Xindi ships get disabled. The Intrepid is forced to withdraw. Enterprise's bridge is torn off like the lid off a tin can, killing the bridge officers within. The Xindi soldiers board the crippled NX-01. Archer recalls something Phlox said. A subspace implosion will kill the parasites. Therefore, Archer, Phlox, and T'Pol work, creating the aforementioned implosion. Phlox and T'Pol are down for the count. Archer is shot, but he manages to push the big red shiny candy-like reset button to create the implosion. Success! The parasites are destroyed. Archer has a bit of a headache, but otherwise the timeline is restored and reset is achieved.
My goodness, now.
Let me fix the sound for you. There we go. Okay, yes, Mr. Right. Townsville.
I have to say now, John, since you took a moment to tell the folks that you're, a little bit of the struggles you're dealing with, I have to tell you that it was worth it, because everybody, I want you to know what I give John on those beats as far as the recording don't sound nearly that good. He must have spent some time and extreme effort editing that to make me sound my best. So, sir, I appreciate it. That was wonderful. Thank you for the editing job on that.
You are very kind, my friend. No, what I did was I did it in the wrong order. And so I edited the video, but not the sound. And so the sound needed to be adjusted, but I had made so many edits, I needed to adjust the sound in each edit.
Oh,
that is pure 100% me, because when you record these, you don't have the music. So
right.
Your audio needs to be raised and the music audio needs to be lowered. But I do, you sound magnificent over that music. So,
well, I appreciate that as well. But before we move on, I just wanted to let everybody know that John did a phenomenal job in putting that together. So, yeah, good beats. It's definitely a team effort. And like I said, a lot of my own stumbles and stutterings were eliminated as a result.
Yes. And Chris has my number. Wrong way, Peter Peach Fuzz. Yes, that's right. I am such a because I really am a beginner editor. I was always an actor. I was always the announcer. I was always the talent. I never had to edit. So yes, that was a tough lesson to learn. And what Joe is not telling you is that when we discussed it yesterday, he was like kind of apologetic and kind of like, I'm sorry you have to do so much. on this. And I was like, please, it's nothing. Oh no, come on. I can get it done in 10 minutes. And I believed that. That was my problem. I believed my own BS. So
Well, as Captain Picard often said, oh, that was too easy. And that's what John was thinking. So he just decided to take it to the next level.
I mean, and the whole time I'm mad at myself because I took a nap.
Oh, well, it paid off. As Raphael says, yes, we are a mutual admiration society, but as far as I'm concerned, at least coming from me to John, very well deserved.
Hey, if just the handful of us who gather for these shows mutually admire each other, I don't think that's a bad thing.
Not at all.
Even if there's millions of us, I'm not sure that's a bad thing. Let's get back down to the subject. Let's talk about this episode. I assume everybody has seen it. If not, oh my gosh, this was my first time seeing it, by the way. You had already seen it, right, Joe?
Oh, of course. I mean, I was a faithful follower of the shows when they were new each and every week.
Yeah.
So I was not aware that you had not seen it before this time. And actually, I guess I should have guessed because you told me that you were kind of hit and miss or occasional at this point in the Star Trek franchise. So.
Yeah. My wife and I watched the first 2 seasons together, and then we really lost interest. And season 3 happened, and then I started on my own watching season 4, which is a very good season.
Oh, the best, arguably, yes.
Yeah. And there's actually a lot of connections from this episode to season 4 that are strong episodes, but we'll be saving those for the later segments we do in the show. Right. Oh, wow. That's great. Chris has never missed any of them, but Raphael's more like me. Never seen it, but now I've heard it.
Well, and please, I mean, the team effort of John and Joe creating the beats definitely summarizes it well, but don't take our word for it. Have a look at it in its complete state.
It is one of the finest Star Trek shows. I don't know if it's top 10 for me, but it's certainly top 20.
Oh, it's up there. So John, it sounds like we're kind of edged, like a nice little segue into Down and Dirty. What do you think?
I think you are 1,000% right. Let's get down and dirty. What makes this episode kind of typical? You hinted at this in your beats, Mr. Townsend. There are returning motifs and tropes in this episode that had been in previous episodes. What are some of the previous episodes you feel were connected to this one?
Well, I mean, before mentioning anything specific as far as the actual episodes, I would just say that the at this point in the franchise, I mean, we're in our 17th year of ongoing consecutive Trek.
Yeah.
And so that's a lot of episodes of Star Trek without a break. Yeah. And it is a recurring trope in the sense that what I called the reset button, which I think is what you're referring to. Yeah. And that, there's going to be some kind of MacGuffin there that's going to basically say, okay, this is bad. This is not the way we want to be, but we're going to, have a little trick here and we're going to put everything back the way it was, but not before we have the emotional payoff. And of course, the high concept. I mean, the episode that comes to mind that probably did it among the earliest would be Yesterday's Enterprise.
Oh, that's a great, yeah.
I mean, you had to go back to the wormhole so we could set everything back the way it's supposed to be. If indeed that was, as Picard pointed out in that episode, is that the proper timeline or is this one?
Right.
Right. That's the other trope. It's like, what is the proper timeline anyway? I mean, are things folding out as they are destined to do so? We can't tell. All we know is that we have a chance to make things better. And what perfect actor to having that concept than Scott Bakula, who of course was Dr. Sam Beckett, and he always put things that went wrong and made them right.
I didn't even make that connection. Oh, that's a good one. I did not even make that connection. It reminded me of several episodes definitely the final episode of TNG. My old man brain has forgotten one of the most famous episodes, the series finale of
All good things.
All Good Things, where we visit a future. And frankly, we just covered Deep Space Nine, The Visitor,
Right.
which is a kind of a similar story. I really had a hard time not thinking about the parallels between how there was a misbegotten future. There was this terrible, tragic, timeline. And if we just somehow get rid of the guy who remembers the previous timeline, it will come back.
Yes. Well, as I say, it's not at that basic level of the so-called high concept. It's not a new thing. I mean, another DS9 episode, for example, was Children of Time, where they're crashing on a planet resulted in them being marooned, and literally hundreds of offspring over the centuries so the dilemma there is, well, what do? We can fix it, but should we?
Mm-hmm.
Now, in this case, what makes it unique is that there's really not a lot of debate there. I mean, is there anything to be gained by leaving it the way it is? Not really.
Yeah,
Things are pretty bad. I mean, all of Earth is gone. Most of their colonies are gone. So that is something that the dilemma of that is not present here, but it elevates it as far as this particular story in terms of its emotional impact, and of course the great relationship that developed between Archer and T'Pol.
Now, I'm trying to not touch on some of our later things. Like, we're going to be talking about MVPs. We're going to be talking about Townsend's tidbits, like the trivia bits and the continuity bits that are in this episode. And there's a lot of great ones. But I will throw this one out there. This had been a storyline, allegedly, that was inspired by the writer, Michael Sussman, who got a bootleg version of the Battlestar Galactica, Ronald D. Moore's Battlestar Galactica script. And he thought it was so amazing. He wanted to kind of, the way he tells the story, he wanted to tip his hat to Ronald D. Moore.
Right.
And that part is huge. Like, there's an exodus of Earth people trying to hide from the Xindi, who are trying to wipe them out. Raphael brought this up a while back. It's very funny. Xindi, is that any relation to the Outer Limits Xanties?
There's a resemblance. at least there are one faction of the Xindi.
Yeah. Raphael, if someone doesn't ask that question to a panel of Star Trek people at a convention, we are underserved as a community, my friend.
I agree.
Excellent question. And then when we were talking about Quantum Leap, Chris said Quantum Trek. Yeah, well, Bacula. Yeah, it's a pure Bacula in there. Let's answer a question from Raphael. Isn't Section 31 in charge of time travel in modern Star Trek? I don't know. We'll have to see what they reveal to us about Section 31 in the upcoming TV movie. Is that what's
well, that's all classified. It's a movie made for television, albeit streaming. My take on it is, Raphael, is no, not really. It's just that maybe unofficially they've appointed themselves in charge of it. But I think we still in the continuity that we have in current Star Trek, the temporal time cops, from the future, are still kind of policing that aspect of it. But
the dragnet cops, look, just tell us about Kirk. Man's a menace.
Man was a menace. Yes.
What I really think was great about this episode was it was a bottle episode, but it wasn't. I've had a hard time, especially with season 3, of following each episode, because again, this isn't exactly my Star Trek, so it doesn't hook me as hard as I want it to. The original series, Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, I was deep into these, but Voyager, Enterprise, pretty much the shows that came before Kurtzman's, new Trek, that was a real soft time for me. I wasn't really keeping up, and it kind of, like season 3, it kind of required you keep up. There's a lot of chapters in this Xindi war and a lot of elements to it, like more than your average 40-minute TV episode can encompass. But you were able to stick to the much bigger story because you were watching those episodes. How did you feel about how this one fit in, Joe?
Well, I'm glad you asked. I have a definite thought about it. I mean, as you point out, Deep Space Nine was pretty much the first series to delve into any kind of serialized storytelling, meaning that other than the occasional two-parter, they had longer arcs. I mean, this was set out to reinvent the series. Counting the season ender for season 2, this was a 25 episode story arc because it encompassed all of season 3. So how does this fit in? I think very well. It touched on the success that DS9 had, where it would have a standalone soul concept embedded within a serialized story arc.
Yeah.
And you could almost, you have to know about the Xindi, you have to know what's going on there, but really, with a very little knowledge of that, you could enjoy this episode all by itself. It doesn't, say, oh, what happened last week? What happens next week? It doesn't. This is basically a standalone in that sense, very well. So a good way to use it.
Yeah, I think I think Enterprise wanted to, and at the beginning of the 2000s, and this is just as a TV viewer that I come up with this theory. So tell me if I'm crazy, chat or Joe or anyone. There used to be this open-ended idea to how a series was going to work. Well, I don't know, could go 12 seasons. I don't know, could go 15. And so a lot of times in the beginning, they would start to tell a story and then they would put obstacles and impediments in those stories that slowed them down. And sometimes they would then switch tracks to other stories. No series embodies this better than the series Lost, which is funny because it's called Lost. And if you just tried to watch a random episode of that series, you would be lost. So I'm not sure a lot of shows had a overarching, in season 1, this happened, season 2, this happens, season 3, this happens. But I did get the feeling that was going on with Enterprise because, like all series, at one point they switched directions because they could see their numbers weren't great and they were going down. And I feel like the answer to this question, was there a continuity thread throughout Enterprise? Not the same one in season 1 as in season 2. The season to kind of fix it was this season 3. And then when it looked like no matter what good work you guys do, you're probably going to get canceled, then they switched up again and they started really throwing spaghetti against the wall in Enterprise season 4. Is that fair to say, do you think, Joe?
I totally agree. And I'll take it a step further by saying that one of the chief complaints about Kurtzman current Trek is that 10 episodes, we got to tell a story. Doesn't matter if the story could cover 15, doesn't matter if it could cover only 5. It's going to be 10 episodes. So the pace is off sometimes, etc. There is still a clamoring for a Star Trek Legacy series, which will be a continuation of the finale of Picard. I would love to see it, of course.
Yeah, me too.
I would vote, if they were listening to me, I would vote for them adopting a Enterprise season 4 approach, 2 and 3 episode story arcs. Because that harkens back, for example, when you have an anthology series, like the 80s Twilight Zone, for example, where you would have an hour and you'd have 2, maybe 3 stories of varying lengths. You spend the time you need to tell the story, not more, not less. And you could do that with a multi-episode story arc approach going forward. And that's why I think season 4 was so successful. Unfortunately, too little, too late.
Yeah. You're dealing with a TV network at that point. You're dealing with a property that they're trying to get new viewers, so they're doing as many things as they can to kind of throw some crumbs, offer some little cookies to the people who like Star Trek, but they also want to get new people in as well, which is, depending on where the culture is at any given time. Sometimes people are receptive to Star Trek, sometimes people are not. Sometimes it's easy to offer it to them. Sometimes because you're on UPN and not everybody watches UPN,
Right.
Then you take some hits there. So they were struggling, but they were doing very good work. And I kind of feel like I'm heading towards MVP. How about you, Joe?
I think, we do Down and Dirty the whole time, so we can go on and kind of overlap at this point.
I agree. So, music. If there's a story to tell about this episode and especially about the final 2 seasons of Enterprise, I didn't realize until I was researching this one, Joe, how incredibly important one guy was. I'm not even sure I knew his name. So let me find him for you, everybody.
Okay.
I want to introduce to you Michael Sussman.
Oh.
Michael Sussman, a writer, a story editor, producer, author, and background performer. There he is.
Oh, yes.
Michael Sussman put himself in Mirror Darkly Part 1 as a dead crewman of the Defiant. Beautifully done, sir.
There are no small roles, only small actors, right, John?
Exactly. It was a very telling thing. I actually was going to kind of try to do it as a joke, which was, I want to talk about a guy who started as a fan fiction writer and then got in touch with the people over at the Star Trek show that he admired so much, and they loved his work and they hired him. And I wanted to mislead everybody and think that I was talking about Ronald D. Moore.
Oh.
Who, as most people, I've never made it a secret, he is one of my absolute favorites out of all the talents that have ever worked on Star Trek. But following that exact same pattern and being a big fan of Ronald D. Moore was Michael Sussman. What has Michael Sussman written? Well, he wrote In a Mirror Darkly, parts 1 and 2.
My personal favorite of the series.
Absolutely. And I think most people would agree that it was one of the most beautifully done, go back to the past, connect it to what's going on in our show. He essentially wrote the prequel to Mirror Mirror from those old scientists from the original series.
Well, it was brilliant in the sense that it was both a prequel and a sequel.
Right.
Rolled into one.
Right. There was because the Tholian web is involved in that as well.
That's right.
Folks, you got to check this stuff out. Now, I have never heard any of the Michael Sussman audio commentaries from the Blu-rays or the plain old DVDs, but reading about all the information that he mentions in his commentaries, they sound like some of the best audio commentaries that a Star Trek fan could ever hear. And he is an absolute Star Trek nerd. As a matter of fact, I'm going to throw this is a preview of Townsel's Tidbits, a little piece of trivia that I absolutely love. There is a dedication plaque on the Enterprise NX-01, and the Starfleet Command representative listed on it is M. Sussman.
Oh, of course.
And in the episode Marauders, we find out there's a Vulcan fight technique called the Sussmana. So Michael Sussman really did incredible work here, and was not, didn't have a huge attitude, was was one of the hardworking guys, which I always think of as Ronald D. Moore as well. So that's my MVP right up front. I got to tell you, Michael Sussman, our writer, go look at all the episodes that he's written of Voyager and of Enterprise. This guy is an MVP. Joe, did you have anybody picked for this week?
I do, but I want to acknowledge first that I think that's a very well selected MVP, because, you know, we do want to recognize as upfront and as wonderful as the actors always are, and, you know, writing and producing and directing, those are such key components. So we do need to recognize people like Mike Sussman, and I'm glad you did. My MVP is a little bit more conventional. Really, everybody in the show are supporting characters except for two, and that's Archer and T'Pol.
Yeah.
And between those two, I'm going to go with T'Pol, and I'll tell you why. For a Vulcan character, one who does not convey emotion,
yeah,
only occasionally with her eyes and maybe a slight expression.
Yeah.
In this episode particularly, she conveys emotion so brilliantly.
Yeah.
The pain she feels for the sacrifice Archer made for her. And I'm guessing also the fact that she feels at least largely responsible for the failure of their mission in this alternate timeline. But mainly just, you know, it's so obvious she's come to care and love for this man over the years.
Yeah.
And all of it conveyed, again, not with tears or laughter, but just very subtly, a brilliant performance by Jolene Blalock. And I have to give my MVP to her portraying T'Pol.
You know, I actually kind of feel guilty that I didn't think of that.
Well, you thought, again, great choices. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, there are no bad choices here, because Bakula could clearly be everybody's MVP on this. He really does a tremendous job at acting like he doesn't know. And that's kind of hard. It's kind of hard to pretend you don't know things. Humans are very proud of what they know. But one of the biggest challenges you'll have as an actor is, how do I not know this? Mm-hmm. And what are the parts of my life in which I don't know, in which I am, you know, ignorant? And, you know, not in the pejorative sense, but in the innocent sense. I just don't know. And I also did want to throw out some laurels to the supporting cast, because, and this is a rough thing to bring up, but I'll bring it up because Star Trek's about everything, including the rough things.
Yeah, of course.
So much of this mirrors dementia. They have to explain to him every day who he is and what's going on. He does not stick around in the moment for very long. And you can see the exhaustion and the tragedy of having to deal with him from the very first scene when he comes onto the deck wearing just pajama pants.
Yeah.
Which, as you know, everything for me is Galaxy Quest. He comes shirtless onto the bridge, and all I can hear is Alan Rickman from Galaxy Quest going, "I see you managed to get your shirt off."
Well, to back up that point, that's an excellent observation, because a little bit later, when she has to explain to him for the how many 100th time what happened to Earth, of course it's new to him. He starts crying, weeping, and you see her. And some people might interpret that as like just overly stoic and cold, but you, especially given what you see later in the episode, you can see the strength and the patience, and your comparison to like dementia and Alzheimer's and such really is totally accurate and on the money, because that's how people deal with those that are suffering from that affliction. I know from personal experience in my family, that's very accurate.
Yeah, same here. It's tough. It is tough because it's in the moment, but the moment can be very difficult, and in the big picture it's even more difficult.
Right.
So it's very hard for us to deal with these things. And what a sensitive subject, what a really Star Trek thing to do. One of the things that we always say on our shows is, when it comes to Star Trek, the best special effect is good acting.
Oh, yes.
And the second best special effect is bad acting. Because it's the drama of it that really like hits you in the heart. It's spaceships, it's ray guns, there's all kinds of stuff going on, but the drama really, that's how you relate. The stories that anyone can feel. It's not just these people in this space opera.
Exactly, and not putting it in our face in the sense that it's subtle but effective.
Yeah, like we're experiencing it. And that's the sort of thing I really, to me, that's the magic. I don't know how the magician got the rabbit out of the hat. I don't know how Star Trek always makes me feel new emotions, even old episodes, even episodes I was aware of. Now, this one is considered, oh, you know what? It's probably time.
Somehow I got sole credit and ownership, but we get them from you guys out in the audience, and of course both of us. But what do you think, John? You want to offer some first or vice versa?
I'd love to, because there is something that you brought up in the beats that is so funny and so true. Okay, so on the planet where Ceti Alpha 5?
Yes.
On Ceti Alpha 5, which Joe already gave you the tidbit that planet would have made its debut later in the regular timeline as the planet upon which oh my God,
Khan. I was about to offer that to you.
Please, John, edit that later. Not gonna happen. Khan and his people are put on this planet, and they say, oh, it's a wilderness planet, you guys will be fine. And of course they're not. There would be an eventual tragedy that would pretty much wipe out humans on that planet. So they were doomed in this timeline. It was absolutely going to happen. But that's not my tidbit. My tidbit is, because they needed to show that Captain Archer has aged, they give him a weird haircut. The weird haircut is an extra Vulcan wig that they just had. And so he's wearing a Vulcan wig, and Sussman said, we figured that was a good idea because T'Pol's been doing his hair.
Exactly.
And so she would do it. Now she's doing her hair in a more sort of natural way, as you noted in the beats. But if she's the one doing his hair, he would have Vulcan hair.
Well, as did any defector to Romulus or anything like that. I mean, they always end up with those haircuts.
Exactly. And it's so funny because, man, that's one of those moments where I go, wow, Bakula can really wear a wig. Not every person can. He can wear the hell out of a wig. Good for him.
Well, and to expand on that a bit, I mean, it was actually one of the test wigs for the Soval character, her former boss, and it was a rejected look. And of course, they kind of messed it up a little bit further to make it look frontiersy. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so, and of course, we saw Soval in this episode. We saw they came with a better look for him. Yeah, unfortunately, but it wasn't all distracting. But you do notice it, especially once it's pointed out to you. Said, "Yeah, he looks a little different here," and that's why.
Yeah. Well, and obviously everything has changed, so that makes sense too. I do want to point out Soval. I always love to point this out. Soval, the actor who plays him, was the regular guy Earthman from Alien Nation, the TV series on Fox. It was based on the movie Alien Nation. And he was like, the Earth guy. He was like the regular Earth guy. And he does such a beautiful job as a Vulcan. Especially, Soval is pretty much one of the villains of the overall series. Enterprise, because he was one of the Vulcans who just really does not like humans, doesn't think they belong owning warp drive vehicles and, you know, taking their hillbilly asses out into space and making the Federation look bad. So I love that connection too. I love that we get to see him again, that he's part of this story.
Well, absolutely. And while I don't disagree with that evaluation of Saval, he does the actor Gary Graham, he does a great job of portraying him, because it's basically more of an overprotective parent that doesn't quite trust their child yet, which is not any better, than regarding them as backwoods hillbillies. But as such, the actor does a fantastic job whenever he appears to kind of convey that, as opposed to just being like any kind of a mustache twirler, because it goes along with the general Vulcan philosophy in this time era that, you know, we gotta lead this along. But I'll take that. I'll use that as a segue to one of my, and this might have been better suited for Down and Dirty, but we'll do it here.
Sure.
He makes a point during his appearance to Paul, saying, if they'd only listened to us, this wouldn't have happened. Well, actually, I disagree with that, because the Xindi were coming anyway.
Yeah.
So if they actually were successful in holding back humanity, they probably would have been more vulnerable, not less. So I'm not sure where his logic came from there, but just something I wanted to point out when we got to some point where we talk about the character. But
yeah, and they also solve one of my favorite things to hate. That's not a good way of putting it. One of the things that always bothered me about Enterprise is I don't like when people go into space poor. I didn't like this about Voyager. I didn't like this about Enterprise. Their shielding is not that good. And so they are constantly getting their butts kicked. Their weapons are not the best. So they're constantly not beating people in battles. There are some incredible battles in this episode, and I did appreciate that. I liked that a lot. And do you want to throw out a tidbit?
I mean, I got a couple of more. I mean,
sure,
we can always bounce back and forth between the topics they bring up, but as far as an actual tidbit, I did pick up that originally this was a concept that was being developed for Voyager.
Yes.
And it was going to be Chakotay being the caretaker to a forgetful Janeway. I don't know the rationale behind holding it or not using it there, but I suspect they might have put it on the shelf because there was an actual episode of Voyager where the two of them were marooned seemingly for the rest of their lives, where they became like a spousal relationship, almost romantic. And that might have been deemed too similar.
Yeah. And do you remember when that, I know that episode existed, but I can't remember what season or.
I should have looked it up. We're talking round about 4th or 5th season.
Okay. Yeah. That'd be a little too close to introducing that new story. And I think that was Sussman who was pitching that story. So he then pitched it again later on Enterprise, if I read all that correctly. But worked out for the best, obviously, because he had the Xindi story arc to use as a backdrop to this tragedy. Right. And it actually there is look at that. Raphael points out that Enterprise is streaming free on Pluto, but only season 1. Man, they play games like that.
Yeah,
they do. That drives me crazy. If you have Paramount Plus, there are, I think, 2 Star Trek channels that just play live. And one of them's more modern and one of them's more the original 2 series, or the original series, and then TNG. But they play around with the availability of Star Trek, and I think that's a really bad idea.
Well, I do too, because, I know exactly what Raphael's talking about on Trek and other series, and they play just a small portion of what's out there.
Yeah.
You go through them all in a week, and you say, well, I guess I'll come back in a year maybe, and it seems like you lose viewers, not gain them that way. But
exactly. This is a streaming society we live in. If you don't make things at people's fingertips, I mean, look, I'm gonna be one of those old men who complains about the good old days. But frankly, the good old days were 2021. And that was back when Star Trek was available everywhere. It was on Netflix. It was on Amazon Prime. It was on so many different services. And that is what people want. That's how people watch shows. So yeah, Paramount Plus has that stuff, but not everybody wants to play.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it definitely is behind the paywall. I guess that's the advantage. But
yeah,
the little tidbits they give you for free streaming is going to be limited as a result. I guess they're trying to. It's the same thing on. You get a lot of this on not full episodes, but a lot of stuff on YouTube.
yeah.
They're just trying to, and that's from Paramount Plus, but they're just trying to come on. You know.
I also want to give credit to another person that you know from Star Trek and their effect on this show, and that is our director, Robert Duncan McNeil.
Yes.
AKA Tom Paris.
Tom Paris.
It's always amazing to me to watch the famous directors episodes, because I feel like they get more budget. I mean, there's so many special effects in this one, and so many space battles, and that scene that you and me being ejected from Enterprise.
I couldn't resist it. I mean, just it is cartoonish, folks. So no, I didn't kill John and myself, or Porthos the Beagle, for that matter. So.
But I love that they go to such extremes, that there were so many special effects shots and battles and things. I mean, the ray guns and the killing just mount at the end. It was, if you told me Quentin Tarantino directed this one, I'd be like, yeah, I could see it.
Yeah, there was nothing softcore about it. It was hard edged.
And everybody dies. I mean, that's the thing. Everybody dies.
Well, again, like a la Yersay's Enterprise. I mean, if this failed, that was it for these people. Period.
Yeah. So, any other tidbits that you had, Joe?
Just a minor one. Just further cementing the fact that we're in the Ceti Alpha system. There is mention at some point in the episode of being in the proximity of the Mutara Nebula.
Right. And yeah, I think that's it for me. I mean, one of the things that they say about Sussman is he was heavily influenced by the second Star Trek movie, The Wrath of Khan.
Right.
And for him, that's always the I'm going to put this up here, but Daily Motion has a variety of Enterprise episodes for free, everybody. Thank you, Raphael. That's some good research right there. If you follow the things that Sussman followed, you can definitely see a lot of influences in his scripts and how the action boils down and the action elements of it. So I love that as well. I really, now that I have someone like Sussman that I can go, I think I want to watch all the Sussman episodes now. I think that's going to be really cool. And that'll help me get more into the two series that I'm weakest on, Voyager and Enterprise. So,
like I said, it sounds like you, unless, like a lot of people did, they were growing a little impatient or disinterested. And right around the time it took off, you decided, I've had enough. But now you're rediscovering it, sometime later. So,
hey, thankfully we have this show, because I have a reason for watching all this stuff now. Otherwise, I would just be watching the same DS9 episodes over and over again, because I always consider that my Trek. We have got, oh my gosh, look what's coming up next week.
Oh my goodness.
So we're going to do a little bit of a bottle episode ourselves, where we're going to bring back an old episode of Starbase 80, which was the first show that I was doing about Star Trek all on my own. I had been on a show previous to that, which was our guest next week, Flobo Boyce, Actually, okay. So Flobo had a show called Commander's Log, and then he was going to move on and work on other kinds of shows. And I said, hey, if I start a Star Trek show, would you come on it with me? And he was like, yeah, sure, of course. And so this was happening during the pandemic. This was like 2021, 2022. As a matter of fact, I think this episode is from 2022, isn't it, Joe?
It is.
Now, Joe and I had appeared on Captain's Log. We were both Flobo's guests. I was like his sidekick guest, a job I loved. And Joe, being an author and a very intelligent, very raconteur, he was our guest. So when I had my own show, Flobo was now I won't say sidekick, but he was now my co-host. We had Joe on that show, and that was the first time that I was producing a show that I had Joe on. I'm like, man, this guy is so cool.
Oh, what a guy. Thank you. Yes, my very first appearance on the old Starbase 8. And actually, you and I both have to stop using that word. We're going to replace old with classic.
Oh, thank you. Classic. So we're gonna be doing this. Joe's busy next week, so he can't do the live show like he's doing right now. But we will pull out one of these old episodes, and Joe will be our host on it. And he came up with a brilliant way of recycling these old episodes and representing them, frankly. And that's under the name Vintage Voyages. Which
yes, if you thank you, John. If you see a Vintage Voyages subtitle, that means we have rebranded, so to speak, and brought back to the front burner some classic shows from John's past.
Yeah, I had a thing, and I still have it, frankly, for Captain Proton, which is speaking of Robert Duncan McNeil. Tom Paris loves to act out these old Commando Cody kind of serials. And this was a really good one. And of course, just look at that artwork, because how can you hate Neelix when it's really Townsend?
Well, some people might be coming with a reason or two, but we'll leave it at that. But I particularly enjoy you as Captain Proton with the Flash Gordon hair. And I particularly enjoy also our friend Flobo there as Tuvok, which hereinafter will be known as Flobok.
So this is a fun episode. It is very much an origin episode of what you're watching right now. So that'll be next week. And Joe, have a great time. Speaking of pre-recorded episodes that are awesome, tomorrow on Retro Rangers, we are going to reveal to you a show that we taped yesterday, and it's a watch party. Basically the chat will still be a big part of the show. We'll still put your very funny stuff up on the screen.
Like this.
Like that from Chris, and that from Raphael. And we will have these we will have a hell of a time. We'll have a great time watching Santa Claus Conquers the Martians. Oh boy, I don't know how much terrible movie you can take, but you got to watch this with us. It is it is a bad movie.
Anyone who watched last week's Deadly Dolls episode of Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea and saw how much I was laughing, bringing myself to tears, easily met that and exceeded it laughing at this.
Oh man. Oh wow. That was a rough one. I think Raphael is still in counseling based on making him watch the Deadly Dolls. So
we'll appeal to him now, Raphael. Please bear with us. Start watching, finish watching. You may regret it, but I don't think so. You're gonna laugh too hard.
No, we don't think so. We don't think so. So next week on Retro Trekkers, a vintage voyage of Voyager and Night, and tomorrow on Retro Rangers, we're going to watch this. Then coming up on Thursday, the speaking of Raphael, Raphael, yes, I'm in rehab over Deadly Dolls. Raphael did give me the idea a ways back for when we do a radio show, we should play an episode of Rocky Fortune starring Frank Sinatra. It's a very good series, and he is so funny in it. There are times when he's kind of just cruising, but that's just Frankie. That's just how Frankie is. And there are other times where he's really a good actor. And that's also very Frank Sinatra. This was what he did right before he got hired to make From Here to Eternity. So this is a very interesting time in Frank Sinatra's life. And this is a Christmas themed episode. He plays a store detective trying to keep Santa Claus alive because apparently there is a plot to murder Santa Claus. So you'll want to join us this coming Thursday. And that, of course, is 7 p.m. on the Pacific Coast and 10 p.m. on the Eastern Coast.
When Rocky Fortune does it his way.
Chris is like, he literally cruised in Ocean's 11. He did. He was not a hardworking actor. But he was in From Here to Eternity because that was his big shot. Right. And he did a great job. I will always give him credit for that. But I do love the kind of like, I don't know, why am I doing this carefree attitude that he had as an actor. And just in general, we hope you'll stick with us, especially for Retro Rangers all month. Retro Trekkers is going to be fun as well. But Retro Rangers, we have our Retro for the Holidays schedule up. It starts tomorrow with Santa Claus Conquers the Martians. We want to hear from you guys.
Yes.
And plenty of time for you to tell us what you want to see on December 8th. We're going to be doing what we call a clip show, and that's where we just watch pieces. You know, we do a watch party, but it's just watching little video clips. We'll be watching some famous Christmas commercials, some moments from variety shows, some terrible things that were made, some public domain things, all kinds of stuff that you might have. And then the ultimate in Can You Take It? The Star Wars Holiday Special on December 15th. Oh boy. And as we get really close to Christmas, we will be watching the public domain masterpiece, It's a Wonderful Life. Will we be cruel? I don't think so, but we might be.
We might be. There'll probably be a mix. You know, Robert's going to have a little bit something snarky to say here and there, no matter what the topic is. So
we will not say don't be snarky. No. Do be snarky. But actually, I do love It's a Wonderful Life. That's a movie I've loved my whole life.
Sure, of course.
Yeah. So there will be good moments, lots of moments coming up. So we hope you'll join us for that. And hey, keeping this under an hour, we should probably get out of here. Oh, no. Not before we do.
Oh, yeah. I'm so glad you remembered, because we can't let this one go this time.
I was gonna. Here we go.
It's too appropriate.
JoeTownsend.com is ready for you with stories to chill you right through and through. Tales of terror and fright for your dark winter's night. At JoeTownsend.com, your screams will ring true. There's horror for holidays wrapped with a bow. These books will give shivers high and low. Make your Christmas time weird with the stories you feared. JoeTownsend.com is the best place to go.
That's all nightmare fuel.
Joe Townsend brings cheer.
Oh my goodness, what happened?
In so many ways as your beating heart sings.
JoeTownsend.com, my friends.
Jangled
Make sure you check it out. And that's it, Joe. We're out of here. Thank you. Thanks everybody in the chat. Thanks Roy. Thanks Bruce. Thanks Raphael.
Retro Trekkers. Capt'n John and Cmdr. Retro Trekkers. We love our Star Treks. Retro Trekkers. The nerd muscles getting to flex. Retro Trekkers. Get down with the retro. Retro Trekkers. Let's get it done. Retro Trekkers. Jumping back with the recap. Retro Trekkers. Reviewing has some fun. Recap. Review. Retro. Recap. Review. Trekkers. Recap. Review. Retro. Recap. Review. Trekkers. Recap, review, retro,